At the time of this recording, it is the end of February, and for most of the Midwest, it is time to start harvesting maple syrup. So I thought it would be fun to talk about maple syrup. How can you take advantage of the harvest even if you're not tapping your own trees? At the end of this episode, I'll be sharing the steps to canning your bulk maple syrup. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Simply Living Homestead, where we empower homesteaders and preserve traditions. I'm your host, Amanda Carlin, and I help homesteading families bring peace and order to their lives. My friend, are you overwhelmed with all the tasks on your homestead? Do you wish for a mentor to guide you through the tough moments each day? Then you've come to the right place. Together, we will learn to organize our homestead, love our families well, and walk in the peace of God. If you're ready to get unstuck from the constant feeling of overwhelm, then join us each week as we explore practical advice, inspiring stories, and heartfelt encouragement to help you thrive. Let's grow a sustainable, meaningful life together, both in the home and on the homestead. Hey neighbor, welcome back to the podcast. Have you seen the price of maple syrup recently? Is there a way that we can take advantage of the maple syrup flow at this time of year, even if you don't have your own maple trees? Yes, you can, and let's talk about it. Before the spring truly sets in, when the trees are still bare and only the winter birds are in the trees, the maple sap starts to flow. Temperatures are not as extreme as earlier in the winter. Streams run with melted snow and icicles drip faster. Crows can be heard announcing the not too distant arrival of spring. This is called sugar weather, when the nights are below freezing and the days are mild. This is the type of weather that makes the sap flow. Jonathan and I have always wanted to make our own maple syrup, but just don't have the time yet with everything else that we're doing. But we do have some sugar maker friends in Michigan, and some of the information I will be sharing also comes from the Massachusetts Maple Producer Association. If you want to see where I got my information, it will be linked below. So maple syrup, where does it come from? The sugar maple is a tree common to most of the Midwest. You can get sap from many different types of trees, but the sugar maple is the one who has the sweetest sap when it is reduced, as well as it is the most prolific. There's also other types of maples, and again, you can get sap from them. You can reduce it into a syrup, but the maple syrup is going to produce the most. Throughout the 4 to 6 week sugar season, each tap hole will yield approximately 10 gallons of sap. A tap hole is where the sugar maple has a small hole drilled into the tree and a metal or plastic tap is inserted. As the sap flows past it up to the branches and the leaves, it will actually, and then back down as the temperature drops, so that the tree does not freeze. It will run past this tap and then into a bucket that is hung below this tap. This is only a small portion of the tree's total sap production and will not hurt the tree. The average amount of syrup that can be made from this is 10 gallons of sap to about 1 quart of syrup. That equals to 40 gallons of sap for 1 gallon of maple syrup. Making maple syrup is hard work, and the cost of syrup from the store or a local producer is high. I've seen as high as $60 a gallon. Comment below and tell me the price of maple syrup in your area. Find that super fascinating. So, how do you get it cheaper? I have been able to get maple syrup as cheap as $33 a gallon by buying it in bulk. We buy it in bulk and bring it in from Michigan. I do realize that that's a bit of a drive for me here in Iowa, but we have friends up there. Jonathan's family is in Ohio, and so it's not a big distance to go up further, just a little further, and to get it. If you are in an a zone area, 5 to 2. So 5 is like the middle of the United States, and 2 is all the way up in Canada. You should have a local producer somewhere close to you. You can find them by Googling, or maybe even asking on a local Facebook group to see if there is someone in the area that does maple syrup. Contact them and see what their bulk prices are. Our producer offers a 15-gallon drum for $33 a gallon. So 15 gallons is a lot, especially when some families will only go through 1 or 2 gallons of maple syrup. Our family, because we use honey and we use maple syrup, and then we use a little bit of cane sugar, we go through a decent amount of it, but we can't go through 15 gallons even with the 12 adults that are on our property. So what we do is we go together with a couple of friends or neighbors and to be able to use up all of the syrup and portion it out. This last fall, we brought in 60 gallons, and I could have brought in more. There was plenty of people that were like, oh, you brought that in, and I didn't have any more. So, people are definitely looking, at least the contacts that I have. So my encouragement would be to, reach out to your local producer and find out what they have available and when does that hit bulk pricing, and then ask around. Again, Facebook, your friends, people from church, maybe people from your gym, or, somebody you met at the library. Hey, I'm bringing in maple syrup. It's going to be quite a bit cheaper. And then the way that we would do it is we would set it up with a big barrel. The big barrels would come in. We'd grab a couple of people. You can't lift that. It's 150 pounds, I think, for a 15-gallon drum. It's a lot. You're not going to pick it up by yourself. So I'd enlist the help of a couple of my brothers. So whoever you have on hand, and we would kind of lift it up onto a couple of sawhorses. Again, you can kind of set it up wherever as long as it can handle that kind of weight. And then we would put a tap into it. I guess technically we'd put the tap in before we turned it sideways, but and then that tap had a shut-off valve on it. And I simply told my friends, I was like, hey, maple syrup is in. I expect everyone to come within the next couple of days. And I accommodated, but we had a measure there so that everyone was getting the same amount that I was portioning out. And people would bring their own jars, and I would just pour into their jars. So, one family gets 5 gallons. Well, I would pour out 5 gallons, and we'd dump it into their jars. Another family only wanted a half a gallon. And so, it just kind of, we were able to very smoothly run through that. And I look forward to being able to do it again. As much fun as the process of maple syrup is, and the fact that we have a woods with quite a few sugar maples in it, we absolutely should be able to do it. It is a lot of work, and I'll be completely honest. At this point in time, I would rather pay it than having to do the work, especially since I have a means of getting it at a cheaper cost and bringing it in. If you have to travel a little bit, even that, if you kind of all split the cost or figure that into the cost of the maple syrup, chances are it is cheaper than the high quality stuff in the store. Run the numbers, see if you can split that up between you and a couple of friends, and that's definitely an option. Now, what happens when you get it in? So you get all of this maple syrup in. Let's say you've kind of figured for your family that you are going to go through 3 or 4 gallons of maple syrup throughout the year. How do you keep it fresh? Maple syrup will generally last on the table for 2 weeks to a month. Yeah, probably. Kind of depending. Sometimes it can go bad as quickly as a week if it's just sitting on the table. In the refrigerator, I have seen it last 2 months, maybe 3. I think I had a friend that it did go bad before 3 months, so I can't say definitively 3 months, but, you can definitely seal it and just shove it to the back of the fridge. But if you're getting enough maple syrup to last you the whole year, that is 9 months what do you do? Well, maple syrup can be canned. It's really just sealing the maple syrup, but, sorry, that was my son. It's really just sealing the maple syrup, a very similar process to what they would do in the sugar shacks, or in the spaces where the big producers are doing it. Of course, they're doing it at a bigger setting, but this is how my friends in Michigan told me to do it. So I'm going to run through the instructions verbally, but if you want to see them, or like have a printout for how to can maple syrup, the link will be in the description. Show notes is where you want to go, and in the show notes there'll be a recipe card that you can print for how to can maple syrup. Okay. Canning can make it last up to 2 years. It is a process called open kettle canning. There is no equipment actually needed to seal it. And I personally put mine in quart and half-gallon jars. But I have had friends portion it down all the way to like pints. And, so whatever works the best for you. You will need canning jars, canning lids, and the rings. You will need a pot for your maple syrup that you can heat, and then a pot that you can put some water in to make your jars really, really hot. First step is to sterilize your jars and your lids, especially because this is not going to be boiled. It is not going to be water bathed. The only heat that is killing bacteria is the temperature that the maple syrup gets taken to. And so you really do need to make sure that you've sterilized your jars. So take all of the maple syrup that you want to can and put it in a big pot and heat your maple syrup to 185 degrees. 180 to 185. Do not go over 195. Your maple syrup is going to start to crystallize. So be very careful that you're watching it there at the end. I guess you'll also need some sort of thermometer to check your temperature. A candy thermometer works really well, but I've had success with a sterilized meat thermometer as well. So, whatever you have on hand, you don't have to have specialized equipment for it. So you've got sterilized hot jars and their lids, and your maple syrup is up to temperature. Okay, next what you're going to do is you're going to ladle the hot syrup into the hot jars. Wipe off the rims with water and like a damp rag to wipe off the top, and then put a lid on it and seal it down. You don't have to wrench down on it. There's no reason to ever take it and just wrench down on it, but you definitely want to be tight. I don't know if that's technically called finger tight. Maybe I should have looked that up. You're going to screw it down till it feels tight. You don't want to feel any play if your fingers are on it. Now, be careful. It's hot. Okay, so, holding a rag in your hand, the jar with a rag works really well. Take it and simply set it aside. I do not turn mine over. Some people say that you need to turn it over so that the maple syrup is touching the lid and the heat is down there. I have a hard time understanding why that would be effective. I don't do that. It has always sealed really well for me. I've sealed a lot of it. We've brought maple syrup in, I think, 3 or 4 times now. And I've probably had 4 quarts not seal in the whole thing. And I've never had any unseal in the basement where they're sitting. So I would say from my own personal experience, it works pretty well. Then you're going to store it. Once it's done, you will hear the lids pop. Just like in canning, you will hear those pops of the lids sealing down. Once that's all done, they're cool. You can label them. I label them with the date and what they are. You don't want to go down there and, get your grape juice mixed up with your maple syrup. And then you're going to store it like your canned goods. If your jar does end up molding in storage and you've caught it very soon afterwards, or maybe you have some sitting in the fridge and it's kind of started forming something on the top of it, you can skim the mold off the top and reboil it to that 185 and then skim again. So you skim it, you take everything off that you can before you dump it into your pot, bring it back up to the 85 degrees, and then let it stop bubbling so that it's like a smooth top, and take off whatever is on the top. When that happens, I personally wouldn't recan it. That doesn't feel safe to me. But I'm not going to tell you what you should do, but that's my personal opinion there. From everything that I can tell, there is no need to water bath can your maple syrup. It is perfectly safe to open kettle can it. And as a reminder, if you want to see this recipe written out, it is linked in the description in the show notes, so you can get that. That's a wrap on today's episode about maple syrup. I hope this gave you some insight into how you can take advantage of maple season, even if you're not tapping trees yourself. Whether you're buying in bulk to save money or learning how to can syrup for long-term storage, there are plenty of ways to make the most of this seasonal harvest. If you're in a colder climate, check with local producers to see if they offer bulk pricing. It's a great way to stock up and share with friends or neighbors. And remember, properly canned syrup can last up to 2 years, making it a great investment for your pantry. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love to hear from you. Comment below with the price of maple syrup in your area, or send me an email at connect@simplylivingHomestead.com if you have a topic that you'd like me to cover. Well, neighbor, before you head out, I just want to say how much I've loved spending this time with you. If you too enjoyed our time together, don't forget to give us a follow and leave a quick review on your favorite podcast player. It really helps more women like us find their way to a simpler, more joyful life. And hey, if you know someone who'd enjoy this episode, why not share it with them? Let's keep growing this circle of encouragement together. Oh, and don't forget to join my email list. I've got some free printables and weekly tips waiting for you to help you live a purposeful, balanced life, one rooted right in the heart and home. Thanks for being here, friend. You're doing a great job. I can't wait to chat again next week here at the Simply Living Homestead.